Hello, hello, and welcome back to yet another NFL video. We are an enjoyable series. I've mentioned it before, I'll say it again. I'm really actually glad I decided to do this because I'm able to cover and talk about teams that I otherwise would have overlooked, would have not paid much attention to, and it's giving me a much greater understanding of how every team, like their expectations and like what's on the line going into this upcoming season. So I'm glad I'm doing this. But today we have number 21, number 20, and number 19, if I'm not mistaken. And every team in this tier, I kind of mentioned it in the last year where I think like those teams had a chance at the playoffs. I think these teams have a much greater chance. Like I feel like all three of these teams I'm about to mention, their fans would be disappointed if they had a losing record. So I think the expectation for all these teams is a winning record and even potentially a playoff spot. I mean, just statistically, I think one of these three teams has to make the playoffs. But we're going to get into that. We're going to talk, and honestly, it's so interchangeable. Like in this three teams I'm going to talk about, like you could make such a good argument for any of these teams being the best. I really shouldn't even. I just had to put them in an order. But honestly, if you flip the order of the three teams I had, I wouldn't even argue with you. They're so close in my opinion. But yeah, let's get right into it. Thank you for watching, as always. Of course, coming together with the Google Slides show presentation. Where would this channel be if not for Google Slide? It wouldn't exist, quite frankly. Let's get right into it. Number 21, I have the Chicago Bears. Obviously, head coach Ben Johnson, one of the hottest head coaching candidates I've ever seen. There were people talking about who was going to get Ben Johnson halfway through last year. Like the turnaround that he played with the Lions franchise. By the way, not just him. It was, of course, head coach Dan Campbell. It was Jared Goff reviving his career. Amazing drafting. It was a lot of factors that turned the Lions into the powerhouse that they are now. But Ben Johnson obviously got a lot of it, and deservedly so, as one of, if not the best offensive coordinators in the NFL. He now goes to the division rival, Chicago Bears, and tries to, I guess, recreate the turnaround that they had in Detroit. And hey, he has a pretty good building block, if you will, with 2023 number one overall pick Caleb Williams. Had a This is the problem. He did not have a bad rookie season considering the circumstances. But when two quarterbacks in your own class, Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, have historically good rookie seasons and they both take their team to the playoffs, it makes Caleb look a little bit worse by comparison. But I'm going to show you the numbers. Caleb did not have a bad rookie season by any stretch of the imagination. Um, and as far as their 2025 record, exact same thing with these other two teams. I personally think for the Bears, first of all, they're in a very, very tough division. I mean, three of the other teams in this division won 10 games last year. Two of them won like 14 at least. So it's an uphill battle for the Bears to have a winning record. But I love a lot of players on this roster. I like the addition of Ben Johnson. Let's get into a little bit of what they were last year and what they're bringing back, especially. So, as you can see there at the top, Caleb Williams, wow, by the way, being the most sacked quarterback in football, bar none. And of course, every sack is different. There are no two sacks that are exactly the same. And some of the sacks were on Caleb, extending the play, trying to do too much, not feeling the pressure, not getting rid of the ball quick enough. All of these things are true. However, the Bears also, I think, objectively, were one of, if not the worst offensive lines in football. And that also comes into effect because they did not have much of a run game, especially outside of DeAndre Swift and Caleb Williams. So, and if you look at the one of the good things here, well, let's start off with the bad before we get to the good. 28th in points per game and dead last in terms of yards per game. This Bears offense just really struggled to move the ball. And a lot of that comes into the fact that they lost nearly 500 yards right there, just in terms of sack yardage. Um, but here's the good point I want to get to here. Low turnover. You would expect, right? A rookie quarterback who gets sacked more than anybody else to just lead the league in turnovers, right? Not the case with Caleb. Six interceptions, which is incredibly low. 562 attempts, just six interceptions. It was a trait coming out of college that Caleb took good care of the football in terms of his decision making, and that absolutely shined through and proved to be true in his rookie season. And only 10 fumbles to go, 68 sacks. That's a that's a pretty good number, if you ask me. So it is a very, very positive sign that Caleb is turning the ball over as low as he is, considering that this is probably the worst that's ever going to be. Well, let me not say that for sure, but I would expect that this is the bottom of Caleb Williams, right? And he put up 4,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Or sorry, 4,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 16 overall turnovers. So if that's the floor, I'm really excited about exactly how much Ben Johnson can get out of Caleb Williams. Let's talk about the running back duo here, D'Andre Swift, Roschon Johnson. They both return, and the Bears pretty much make no additions to this unit. Let me say this. Roschon Johnson, I don't have a whole lot to say about him. You see his yards per attempt were terrible. He pretty much is just a big body goal line type back. You can't really do a whole lot with Roschon Johnson. D'Andre Swift is the guy I really want to point out here because I feel like he kind of gets a little bit underrated here. He actually had a better year statistically than he had his last year in Philly, and he was a Pro Bowler in 2023. I think he had a lot more hype that year. Maybe it's just because I don't. Maybe just the Eagles were a better team; they're more popular than the Bears. But I feel like D'Andre Swift, people are talking about like he fell off this year with the Bears when the numbers say it's the exact opposite. He actually got better, more yards, more touchdowns, all that stuff. But one of the things I want to point out here, Swift's last year in Detroit, Ben Johnson was there, and D'Andre Swift's yards per carry and yards per touch were actually extremely high. One of the best years of his career. He got hurt that year, so we didn't really get to see the full version of it. But I do believe D'Andre Swift, with reuniting with Ben Johnson, could we potentially see uh, the best version ever of D'Andre Swift? He's finally able to stay healthy. These last 2 years, he played all 17 games last year, which is definitely a career high. I feel like, and this is my idea is kind of proven by the fact they did not make any additions to the running back room. I think Ben Johnson, especially, is very confident with D'Andre Swift going forward. He's only 25 years old, guys. He's been in the league like 4 or 5 years already, but he came in really young, I guess. D'Andre Swift, I feel like, has another level that has yet to be unlocked. And if Ben Johnson can turn D'Andre Swift into a real all-pro caliber running back, this Bears team could be they could go from 32nd, dead last in yards per game, to top 10. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. This could be a dangerous offense because let's talk about these two receivers they bring back. DJ Moore in 2023 with Justin Fields as his quarterback was an all-pro level player. And last year, with a major down year for DJ Moore last season, 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. DJ Moore is a bona fide number one receiver, and I definitely expect Ben Johnson to get the most out of him next season. Rome Odunze, a really underrated rookie season, 750 yards, 3 touchdowns, in a dead last offense, guys. I'm trying to reiterate this point over and over because when you keep that in mind, what these guys were able to do on the worst offense in football becomes more impressive in my opinion. So when I look at Rome Odunze having 749 yards as a rookie on one of the worst offenses in football, maybe the worst, I look at that and say, man, when Ben Johnson turns this around, exactly what kind of a player could Rome Odunze turn into? I still love the pick. And I think his potential is still through the roof. So I look at the building blocks, right? D'Andre Swift, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Caleb Williams. I feel like all of these guys have levels, even though guys like Swift and DJ Moore have been Pro Bowlers and All Pros before. I feel like all of these guys have such untapped potential that just could get taken to a whole nother level. Cole Kmet's another guy who gets brought back. Obviously, with the move that they made during the draft, he's not going to be as big of a role, but I think they're going to run a lot of two tight end sets. So I do think Cole Kmet is still going to have a large role to play in this offense. And as you can see, we only got 7 players here because the Bears offense, being as terrible as it was like 95+% of it was limited to just these 7 guys right here. And they lost Keenan Allen, which I was going to say it was a loss, but they made 2 additions to the wide receiver room, which I do think is going to more than counteract for the loss of Keenan Allen, who, by the way, he was not as bad as I thought last year. He missed 2 games, still had, better season than Rome Odunze. Pretty solid season, all things considered. I think he really turned it up the second half of last season, was really noticeable there. But yeah, they lose Keenan Allen. I do think this offense obviously is going to get leaps and bounds better than it was in 2024. And defensively, right? Here's the thing. Terrible run defense. Undeniable. One of the bottom 5 in the league last year against the run. but middle of the pack everywhere else. That's the goal. If they can just clean up their run defense and then be exactly where they were everywhere else, I feel like Ben Johnson would take that. Absolutely, I think he would take that. And I think the Bears really do have the skeleton of a top 10 defense, right? Um, and let's talk about that a little bit here. So, how many Pro Bowlers do you guys see when you look through this defense? Well, I see an amazing linebacking duo between TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds. I see Jalen Johnson, or is it Jaden? I think it's Jalen. Let me see. Yeah, Jalen Johnson in the back end, obviously, one of the best cornerbacks in football. I see Javon Dexter up front, a young stud defensive tackle with potential sky high, 5 sacks last year. I see Montez Sweat, who's supposed to be the premier pass rusher, only had 5.5 sacks last season. You would hope that he could take a step forward and be their premier guy on the defensive line. But I see a really talented young secondary, Jaquan Brisker, Kyler Gordon. I think Tyreek Stevenson gets kind of shit on a little bit, but I do think he has a ton of potential left remaining. I really do think these guys have potential to be one of the better defenses in football to go along with potentially a top 10 offense, at least on paper. Now let's talk about some of the moves they made via free agency and the draft. The Bears, of course, really invested heavily in changing their offensive line for the better. And I love that, man. They had a clear weakness, right? They could not protect their young new franchise quarterback, and they went out and addressed that wholeheartedly. Let's quickly talk about some of the guys they brought in to turn this offensive line around. Where are the Bears, real quick? Let me find them for you. All right, so Braxton Jones, he returns, right? As they keep their tackles the same. Here's the thing: Braxton Jones, and this is just in terms of PFF, was a good left tackle last season. Only allowed 5 sacks. By the way, you guys saw the numbers: 68. Only 5 of those came from Braxton Jones. So that just goes to show you how bad their interior was last year. He didn't play a whole season. He missed like 4 or 5 games, I believe. But when he was out there, he was not just an above average offensive tackle. He was a good left tackle last season. He returns. That's a good decision, in my opinion, to keep him at the left tackle spot. They bring in Joe Thuney, who is arguably the best left guard in football. I mean, there is not a better pass protector in the league, in my opinion. And the man played over 1,100 snaps in the regular season last year, did not allow a sack. And that's between splitting time at left guard and even getting kicked out to left tackle. And by the way, the man only had one penalty in over 1,100 snaps. Joe Thuney is an all pro. He's an all world. If I was building an offensive line, I'm for sure taking Joe Thuney. Without a shadow of a doubt, he's playing guard for me. So that is such a slept on, such an underrated move. That is an amazing decision to bring on Joe Thuney to be your best offensive lineman. They bring in Drew Dalman from the Falcons. He only played about half the season, but when he was out there, truly an elite Pro Bowl level center when he was playing for the Falcons last season. So yet again, a slept on, under the radar move that greatly improves the biggest weakness for this team last season. They also bring in Jonah Jackson from the Rams. Now, he dealt with injuries last year, really only played a fourth of the season. When he was out there, though, good, good, not just okay, not average, not above average, good offensive guard, major upgrade at the right guard position. And then they bring back Darnell Wright, who was their first round pick in 2023. He's played 2 seasons now under his belt. And guess what, guys? Last year, he did have a few penalties. He did allow 6 sacks, but the PFF grades say Darnell Wright is on the cusp of being a Pro Bowler. And I would second that. I would not be shocked this year if Darnell Wright breaks out and has a Pro Bowl / all pro level season at right tackle. So we could see this offensive line being like same as the Bears offense, right? This could go from worst to top 5, top 10. I love the additions they made on the offensive line. Now let's talk about some of the additions they made to their wide receiver room. And another thing I want to add before I get to the wide receiver room, they were second worst on third down last year. A lot of that comes to play calling. Now, a lot of that comes up to the fact that they were back behind the sticks a lot because of all the sacks they incurred. But to go from that second worst on third down, the Lions were number 4 last year. So that just goes to show, I think the play calling difference, especially, is going to make such a difference here for the Bears offense. And let's talk about the wide receivers here. They bring in Luther Burden. I love the pick. Incredible steal to get him in the late 30s. He is just a day one Keenan Allen replacement. I love throwing him in the slot. I think that's going to, I mean, the wide receiver. It's the more I talk about the Bears, the more I love it, but it's so much unprovenness. That it's so much new. That's the only thing holding it back is everything's in my head. It looks great, right? It's amazing on paper, but a new coach, second year quarterback, uh, like new offensive line. A lot of things have to gel, and it could go great, but there's still a chance. The more newness you add to a team, the greater things that can go wrong, in my opinion. So it's to be determined, but I'm loving what I'm seeing so far. Luther Burden, you bring him in. Olamide Zaccheaus, under the radar. They brought him in free agency. I thought that was good enough in and of itself to be a slight downgrade from Keenan Allen, but overall still be a solid slot receiver for you. But then they add in Luther Burden. That's two additions to this wide receiver room that makes it deeper and just better overall. And the tight end, obviously, Colson Loveland with your top 10 pick. I didn't love it at the time. I just didn't think the value was there. However, I cannot deny the fact that Ben Johnson appears to know what he's doing at the tight end position when you look at Sam Laporta in Detroit. Could Colson Loveland be the Sam Laporta for the Bears? I believe so. He's a bit limited as a blocker. You're going to use him more as an, you know, inline receiver, if you will. Like, and with the amount of 12 tight ends, or sorry, two tight end sets, 12 personnel, I do think that they're going to be pretty successful with their two tight end sets in Chicago. So overall, honestly, look at this offense. I don't dislike anything. Who's the worst starter on this offense? Look at their top 11. Jonah Jackson, a good offensive guard, is your worst starter. This shit could be elite. It really could be elite on paper. And then defensively, you bring in Grady Jarrett, Deo Digbo, and Shamar Turner, all to, in theory, improve this run defense. I love that idea. And like I said, the rest of the defense is good enough. Like it's just I like the duo of linebackers, one of the best in the league. I like their secondary. Even Tyreek Stevens, he had a really good slept on rookie season. And as long as Montez Sweat gets back to what he was, Javon Dexter continues to move in the right direction, which could potentially be Pro Bowl level defensive tackle. I mean, I love it, man. I love what the Bears are doing. And like I said, the only thing holding them back from being even higher for me is the fact that we have not seen anything yet. It is all hypothetical. It's all on paper. They're doing all the right things. We just have to see how it looks on the football field. I only did three teams because I was hoping to spend less than 45 minutes. I already spent like 15 minutes on the Bears here. But so here's the positions overall. I decided to make quarterback an upgrade just because I do think Caleb is going to take monumental steps forward with all the improved talent around him. And of course, with Ben Johnson calling the plays, I think it's extremely reasonable to expect the Bears quarterback play to be better than it was last season. I mentioned with the wide receiver room, you added Olamide Zaccheaus and Luther Burden. I do think that makes up for the fact that you lost what's his name, Keenan Allen. Running back remains the exact same group of players. But I do think DeAndre Swift, if I had to bet money, would take a jump and as long as he remains healthy. This is the only problem for me. DeAndre Swift has dealt with injury concerns in his past, so that's the only thing I wonder why they didn't bring in a guy. I wouldn't mind seeing them add a guy like J.K. Dobbins, for example. He's still a free agent, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I do think DeAndre Swift could potentially unlock the best version of himself going forward. But I decided to leave that as an even. Tight end obviously gets better. You add in Colson Loveland. You got two guys that you trust, I would assume, at the tight end position now. Offensive line, the most upgraded position group on the team. One of the most upgraded offensive lines, probably the most upgraded offensive line in the National Football League. And that is exactly what you want to see with a new head coach coming in, trying to protect his young franchise QB. Defensive line, I mentioned it. You added three guys, one to the draft, two via free agency. That should go towards improving this god awful run defense from last year. And linebacker, safety, cornerback, no really any additions anywhere. They did draft Zoff Frazier, the young promising Tariq Woolen 2.0 cornerback, but the rest of the defense does not need to change. You just need some more run defense, and you should be middle of the pack at worst. So I love the Bears, man. They're one of the teams I'm going to be watching the closest. I'm so excited to see how they look on the field. However, I'm going to reiterate this for the third time. I have to see it to believe it. As far as the Bears are concerned, they've been bad for a long, long time at this point. So, yeah, moving on. Finally, after 20 minutes on the Bears, we have the Colts, in my opinion, at number 20. Uh, what can I say about the Colts? Well, Shane Steichen has been exactly 500 over the last 2 years. And here's the thing. Considering what they've had at the quarterback position, I would say that's a bit of an overachievement, right? In 2023, AR went down very, very early. They had to turn to Gardner Minshew. He led them to a winning record, 9-8, and they almost make the playoffs. I think it was like a running back who dropped like a very easy pass to make the playoffs in 2023. So that was an overachievement, in my opinion. Now, 2024, they go backwards, but it's not necessarily for the reason you think. AR played more. They played in 2023, obviously, and they had a winning record under AR. The problem was Joe Flacco came in. He was actually better than AR statistically, but the record was significantly worse. It's really weird to wrap your mind around. Like they do play better when AR's in the game, but he himself has not shown any sort of growth or improvement. So that's why this year, 2025, is the year. Shane Steichen's on the hot seat. The GM is on his last legs. AR is going to get dealt if that doesn't work out. And also, at the time I'm making this video, the owner died like a week ago. Rest in peace to Jim Irsay. So the whole franchise is just in disarray at this point, but they still have a really good roster on paper. And I feel like their floor is 8 wins, even though that's what they had last season. So let's talk about it a little bit here. Colts last season, average offense. Here's the thing: average offense with as bad of a quarterback play. I mean, look at AR's numbers. I mean, respectfully, man, it's terrible. It's terrible from Anthony Richardson, but you had a winning record. On it really doesn't make sense. I mean, how many turnovers? He had 12 interceptions, 9 fumbles. That's 21 turnovers to 14 touchdowns. Terrible, terrible numbers, but they're winning games with him somehow. Terrible passer rating, terrible quarterback rating. Look at the difference between Joe Flacco. 30 points higher of a passer rating. They were able to move the ball much more efficiently with him, but they couldn't win the games. I'm not sure why. The defense kind of did collapse though the second half of the season. I mean, if you remember the Giants game, they let was it Tommy DeVito? It was somebody. I think it might have been Drew Lock. They let the Giants run through them. Well, at the end of last year, that was just embarrassing. But let's talk about the offensive pieces here because it really is impressive in my opinion. They were bottom six defense, but I just have to hammer that home. Average offense, bottom six defense last year. This group of weapons, man. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor, all pro running back when he's healthy. I mean, there's just no questions about it. Jonathan Taylor is a true difference maker. He gives you over 100 yards from scrimmage per game in his sleep. I mean, when he's out there and he's on point, truly one of the elite running backs in football. Obviously, had that 2,000-yard scrimmage season, not even like what 2-3 years ago at this point. They have three receivers, man, that can really. I mean, and this is the interesting part. They have three really good receivers, but the one they paid, Michael Pittman, is the worst out of all of them. It makes no sense in hindsight why they gave Michael Pittman that contract, especially considering the fact they drafted A.D. Mitchell. I think this team and this offense would be so much better if they just dealt Michael Pittman for a third-round pick and used that money elsewhere. But it is what it is. They paid Michael Pittman, even though Josh Downs is better, Alec Pierce. Look at the difference in terms of yards per catch between Alec Pierce and a guy like Pittman, and just Josh Downs for that matter as well. It is monumental. Alec Pierce is without a doubt the best deep threat in football, and it's not even close. This man catches 2 or 3 bombs per game. It's insane. Josh Downs also has taken steps in the right direction. Only played 14 games last year, still had over 800 yards, 5 touchdowns. Michael Pittman has to step it up. I mean, listen, because you can't say that the quarterback play is an excuse, right? Because look at what Josh Downs and Alec Pierce are doing. They're better than him. So he has to step it up, without a shadow of a doubt. And then A.D. Mitchell as a rookie, I guess you could say disappointing. He definitely showed his flashes, right? 300 yards, but you definitely want to see more out of him. But who is he going to get? I mean, you can't run too many 4 receiver sets, right? The only time A.D. Mitchell is really going to get a whole lot of looks is when one of those top 3 guys go down with injury. So it's a tough situation to be in if you're A.D. Mitchell. But the running back room, they made an addition at the backup running back position I'm going to get to. And the tight end, one of the, if not the worst groups of tight ends in the league last year. Alec Ogletree, Mo Alie-Cox, Kyle Granson. They needed to make this draft pick that we're going to get to later. And then defensively, man, just not a lot of difference makers, man. I mean, Zaire Franklin led the league in tackles. Very impressive, obviously. Believe he was a Pro Bowler. Outside of that, man, DeForest Buckner only played 12 games. He is obviously an elite defensive lineman when he's healthy. Kwity Paye had 8 sacks, probably their best player on their whole team, arguably. Well, defense at least. Secondary, man, just not good enough. Not good enough last year. That's why they made the improvements that they did that we're going to get to. But yeah, bottom 6 defense without a shadow of a doubt last year. They needed to make upgrades, and I believe they did. Let's get to the new roster here. Offensively, remains pretty much the same here. They do add Tyler Warren, though. Amazing pick, A-plus pick. This was one of the more obvious selections, like throughout the entire draft process, and it's not hard to see why. I mean, Warren is a stud, top 10 overall player in the entire class, top 7 actually. I think I had him. And he you add this difference maker, top level elite player at your weakest position group offensively. I mean, just this was already a great group of receivers. Now you add Tyler Warren. I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's just no excuses for Anthony Richardson at this point. They also make some improvements to this running back room. Khalil Herbert from Cincinnati, he didn't get a whole lot of look last year. I'm more interested in DJ Giddens, the running back out of Kansas State. Big play machine for the Wildcats. I would not be shocked if he jumps Khalil Herbert in the depth chart by season's end. And if Jonathan Taylor goes down, I feel very comfortable having DJ Giddens out there. I'm just, saying that now. I like a lot what he did at the college level. Let's talk about the offensive line a little bit. The Colts right here. They did lose two starters. Well, two. They didn't play a whole lot of games. They weren't exactly healthy, but the center and Will Fries, the offensive lineman, they lose both those guys. Let's talk about how they look to replace them here. If I can get to it any day now. 1 second. All right, Colts offensive line. Colts offensive line. All right, so you got Bernhard Raimann coming back to left tackle position. By the way, Pro Bowl left tackle. Not a lot of people have been paying attention, but Bernhard Raimann has turned into a pretty elite guy. Drafted in 2022, you like what you got there at the left tackle position. Quenton Nelson at left guard. Obviously, if you don't know, Quenton Nelson, one of, if not the best players in the entire NFL at the offensive line position. So you love what you got there on the left side, right? Bernhard Raimann, Quenton Nelson, amazing tandem. Tanner Bortolini is what you're looking at the center. Did not play a whole lot. Only played about 350 snaps last season. Was a rookie, by the way. So, considering the fact he was a rookie, I think you're pretty happy with that. So, coming back next season, getting more opportunity, I think you're cautiously optimistic about the center position. Right guard, Matt Goncalves didn't play a whole lot. I mean, also a rookie though. So, I mean, two rookies on the interior. I would have high hopes that they both improve going into 2025. And then Braden Smith at right tackle. He's been a long time starter there. Dealt with some injuries last year, but when he was out there, he was solid. Not good, not great, but there's definitely a lot of worse players than Braden Smith at the right tackle position. So offensive line, I guess it does get worse because you lose your established vets and you bring in rookies. Well, you rely on last year's rookies to get better, but I'm not mad about it. You definitely still have the studs on the left side of the offensive line. And then defensively now, let's talk about it. So you add Cam Ward, sorry, not Cam Ward, Cam Bynum, Charvarius Ward, both guys. Bynum, pretty much a Pro Bowl level player at the safety position last year, massive piece of the Vikings secondary. And then Charvarius Ward, who not even 2 years ago was arguably the best cornerback in all of football. He dealt with some personal tragedy last season that certainly impacted his play on the field, as well as losing their defensive coordinator. They had Brandon Staley calling plays last year for them. So not his best year last season, but if he can even play at 80% of what he was in 2023, you're looking at a true number one corner here in Indianapolis. So I love the additions they made to the secondary, one of their weakest position groups. Linebacker remains the same. They do lose EJ Speed, replace him with Jalen Carlees, who was a fifth-round draft pick last season. As long as you got Zaire Franklin over there, I'm pretty confident with the linebacker group. Laiatu Latu, he was a first-round pick last year. I love that pick, by the way. You need him to take a jump. You like what you saw out of him as a rookie, but he needs to develop kind of quickly due to the lack of talent around him. Kwity Paye, obviously, 8 sacks last year. If he can just recreate what he did, I think you're pretty happy with that. They don't have a number one passer. That's their biggest weakness on this whole team, arguably. But between, hopefully, Laiatu Latu, Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, you got three kind of number two options, I would hope at least, right? That could, generate enough of a pass rush to, compensate for not having a true number one. And then JT Tuimoloau, you get him in the second round, his potential, who knows what that's it. I see JT Tuimoloau as a guy who can come in and be a good rotational pass rusher out the gate. So you would hope he adds something to this pass rush. So that's 3.5 players between JT, Charvarius Ward, Cam Bynum, and then getting back to Forrest Buckner, hopefully healthy for a full season, should make this defense much improved, especially compared to what they were last year. And here's the thing. You look at a really, really bad defense and some terrible quarterback play. The theme for the Colts here really is just all the potential room for growth, right? If Shane Steichen is worth a damn as a coach, he will turn Anthony Richardson into a competent quarterback this year. And if he just does that, man, how do the Colts not win 10 games with just the talent they have on the offense and the additions they made to the defense? I feel like they have to get better, man. Like they just have to, or else everybody's getting fired pretty much. So here's the overall growth or lack thereof at certain positions. Quarterback remains the same. You would hope it gets better, but it's still Anthony Richardson. Wide receiver was already great. They did not make any additions because they didn't have to. Running back does get better because you add DJ Giddens, in my opinion. That's a real slept on, underrated pick. But I like to think that if something happened to Jonathan Taylor, you would be very, very comfortable having DJ Giddens in there. Tight end, obviously, Tyler Warren, one of the best picks in the entire draft. He comes in and I would expect him to dominate. Like no other tight end on this, like even comes close. It's not even a competition. Tyler Warren is the guy at tight end. Offensive line gets worse because you lose 2 starters. But honestly, I'm not all that caught up about it. I do think the rookies from last season could take jumps and be good, solid starters in 2025. Defensively, or D-line rather, you add JT to Tuimoloau, and you would expect Atuato to get better. That means that overall, I think defensive line improves. Also, getting DeForest Buckner back healthy for a full season. Linebacker, you lose EJ Speed. That makes the group worse overall. Still got Zaire Franklin, though. Safety, add Cam Bynum, major upgrade. Cornerback room, add Travarius Ward, major upgrade. So overall, as you can see, the Colts are moving in the right direction on paper. We have to see. It's just no team in their success, I think, is more dependent on how their quarterback plays than the Colts and Anthony Richardson because it's such a question mark. He's had 2 years. It has been more than enough time. I think most teams probably would have given up on Anthony Richardson by now, but the Colts have not given up on him yet. And here's the thing: the reason I have the Colts as high as they are, even though they have one of the most shaky number 1 quarterbacks in the entire league, the addition of Daniel Jones. Listen, you can laugh at me all you want. I really do think that Daniel Jones, if something went wrong, if AR was a bum, if they had to bench him, he gets hurt, whatever. If they had to roll with Daniel Jones, I am very confident that Daniel Jones can take this offense, as talented as it is, that he can take them to the playoffs. Like, if they just started the year with Daniel Jones, I might pick him to win 10 games, honestly, because the talent around him is just so good. It's so much better than what he had in New York. We've seen Daniel Jones take a team to the playoffs and win a playoff game. So when people say Daniel Jones is like a bum, he can't do anything, that's just objectively wrong. We've seen him have some success, right? So that's like the safety net, the unspoken thing about the Colts, where if it all goes wrong and you got to get rid of AR, at least you got Daniel Jones, which I am much higher on him, of course, than some other people may be. Moving on. Number 19, the Arizona Cardinals. Now, they were another team just like the Bears who were in my most improved video that I did a couple weeks ago, but I will reiterate and kind of come at it from a different angle. Some of the things I said about the Cardinals obviously had a much improved season in 2024 than they did in 2023 under second-year head coach last year, Jonathan Gannon. Getting Kyler back healthy for a full season obviously made a world of difference. They swept the 49ers, which they have not done in who knows how long, probably decades at that point. And the record for 2025, the problem for me, I don't know what it is. When I look at the Cardinals and I look at their key pieces, I just don't view them that highly. And I do think in a lot of ways they overachieved last season because when I look at the talent on this roster, I don't see 8-9. I don't see, borderline 500. I see 5-6 wins. But clearly they proved me wrong last year. I mean, let's look at the stats here. The Cardinals were a top 10 or 11 offense, depending on where you look. And they do have difference makers. James Conner, he's a guy where I think of James Conner, I don't think top 10 running back. I don't think 1,500 yards, but that's what he did. That's what he's been. He was a Pro Bowl running back last year, arguably the best year of his career. So, I mean, he is a real difference maker. I mean, not hardly anybody is talking about Trey McBride being an all-pro level player, arguably the best tight end in the entire NFC. Obviously, I have to debate that with George Kittle, but he had a massive breakout year last year, over 1,100 yards as a tight end. That's a massive difference maker. Marvin Harrison, for all the hype he got, I guess you could say his rookie season was kind of disappointing. But I mean, man, if your baseline is 900 yards, 8 touchdowns, the sky really is the limit for Marvin Harrison Jr. Those are 3 guys right there that any other team would love to have on their roster, right? So I guess the biggest thing with the Cardinals, right, is just Kyler. It's like, how many years has it been, man? He's 27 now. I feel like he's played at least 4 or 5 healthy seasons. It's just, does he have another level? And my problem with that is that they have not made any improvements to the offense to where I can use some kind of outside point to say, well, Kyler, I think he's going to get better because of this. If you expect Kyler to get better, it would simply have to be because of his own dedication, some magical just switch that he flips. But I don't see that happening. I think last year the version of Kyler Murray we saw is the norm. I mean, is it the ceiling? I don't know, but I mean, they didn't make any additions to boost his play going forward. So if that's the version of Kyler we're getting going forward, I don't think the Cardinals can ever win a playoff game. Respectfully, I just don't think he's good enough. He's not bad. He's above average. Is he good? I guess so. I guess he's between that above average and good range. But if I had the option of getting Kyler Murray or the number one overall pick next year, I'd take the number one overall pick next year. I don't view Kyler as a player who can win your franchise playoff games because he's never done it before. He's had 4 or 5 healthy seasons at this point. He's had good rosters, and what has he done with it? Nothing. So I view Kyler, I think, more negatively than some other people. I do think I view him higher than some people because there's some people who just think he's like a bum, a scrub. But I don't think. I mean, the numbers say he's better than that, but I don't know, man. I'm not that high on Kyler. And the rest of the offense, I think the wide receiver room overall is kind of weak. I mean, Michael Wilson was your wide receiver 2 next year. And the concerning thing for me, they didn't make any additions. Why are you rolling into next season without making any sort of additions? I mean, Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, there's got to be some guys. I think the Cardinals, why are you not going out and getting a guy like Keenan Allen? He's still a free agent right now. They should have went out and got Tyler Lockett. So there's definitely some additions that could be made, but they're just choosing to roll with the same guys. And they got some young pieces. So I'm not saying that, just abandon guys like Michael Wilson. I'm just saying they could use another vet in that locker room, I feel like, who could, potentially be your wide receiver too. The running back room, obviously, James Conner, I underrate him consistently, but I think Trey Benson could be a guy who has a breakout season, depending on how many looks, I should say, he gets this upcoming year. I mean, 4.6 yards per carry, that's not something to scoff at. Now, that's pretty impressive, I feel like. Um, let's talk about the defense here. Defense last year for the Cardinals, it was average. But that's the thing. It was average, but how many Pro Bowlers do you see? Outside of Budda Baker, is this not one of the worst, defenses in football, just in terms of talent, names? Outside of Budda Baker, I think the Cardinals defense massively overachieved, man. They're incredibly young, by the way. How many? Only one 30-year-old in their entire top 90. So an incredibly young defense who I think is really taken after Jonathan Gannon. I think he did a great coaching job last season for the Cardinals, and I think they started off pretty. I think they started off like 6-4 or 6-3, and they kind of fizzled out at the end of the year. But I mean, man, just look at the roster, man. How did this team win 8 games last year? So it. The reason I'm putting the Cardinals over teams like the Colts and the Bears, I definitely think on paper they're the least talented team out of this trio that I have. But if they were able to win 8 games last year, and we're going to get into it, they made so many additions to the defense. I mean, I cannot make an argument to how they got worse anywhere. Their offense is pretty much identical. They improved the defense. They won 8 games last year. The only thing I could say is that I don't think there's any way in hell they sweep the Niners next year. So I think that their division got tougher. And I think maybe because of that, their schedule, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they don't win as many games, but like just the roster, right? It improved. And they won 8 games last year. So it's really tough for me here to look at the Cardinals objectively. Let's talk about the roster, right? I mentioned earlier, offense pretty much identical. Let's talk about this offensive line quickly. If I can get to it anytime soon for you. Let me scroll to the Cardinals. Give me 1 second here. All right, so the Cardinals here. Paris Johnson at left tackle obviously was a top 5 pick a couple seasons ago. He is pretty much on the verge of being like a Pro Bowl level player. He is right there at the edge of being a really, really good left tackle. He has all the traits, all the skills for it. It would not shock me at all if he's a Pro Bowler next season. Aaron Brown at left guard, underrated. Not good, not bad, certainly not bad. Above average to good. Solid guy to have at your left guard position. Hjalte Froholt. Don't know how to say his name, but really good center. Had never heard of him before I looked him up for this video. He was good last year for the Cardinals. Good to very good at the center position. If you're comfortable about that. Isaiah Adams, he was a rookie last season playing out of Illinois, if I'm not mistaken. He was their worst offensive lineman, but I think guards especially take big jumps year 1 and year 2. I could see Isaiah Adams taking a jump like that, but as of right now, he is a negative on this offensive line. And then Jonah Williams, you bring him in from Cincinnati, and I mean, he was very limited last year. Only played about a third of the season. When he was out there, though, he was good. Did not allow a sack, and good PFF grades. So if things go well, if the offensive line's healthy, especially that right side, um, could it be above average? Yeah. Could it be good? Yeah. I don't think it could be bad, honestly. Unless Isaiah Adams is terrible, John Williams gets hurt, unless barring catastrophic injuries, I do think they have a good to very good offensive line. And my only concern, like I mentioned earlier, I really wish they would have added somebody to the wide receiver room, and they didn't even draft anybody. So it's like they must be really comfortable with Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch, but I don't really understand that. Obviously Trey McBride, James Conner, the big difference makers here. I mentioned Trey Benson. Is there another world to Kyler Murray? That is the but here's the thing, man. It's not good on paper. It's good, but it's not top 10. They were top 10 last year. I do not see top 10 when I look at this offense, which is shocking to me. Defensively now. They had next to no pass rush last season. They addressed that and then some. I mean, Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell, and the number one guy, Walter Nolan. I consistently predicted them getting Walter Nolan in my mock draft, but them actually doing it and picking him, that was a difference maker for sure. I do expect this pass rush to be much improved going into next season. And then, man, the Will Johnson pick. Oh, man. Obviously, there's a reason he fell. I'm sure there are massive injury concerns that we're going to hear about for a while. But man, I don't care. Getting Will Johnson in the second round, one of, if not the biggest steals in the entire draft, improves their secondary, which I already thought had some interesting young players, Max Pelton, Garrett Williams, guys like that. Add in Will Johnson, that's very, very interesting. Keep an eye on their cornerback room going forward. Very young, very talented. Um, you got BJ Ojulari, who you drafted in 2023. You need him to kind of take a step forward. Darius Robinson, same story with him in 2024. You have young guys who need to get going. But yeah, I mean, also, by the way, add in Josh Sweat, massive, massive difference maker for the Eagles defensive line. I don't know how I overlooked him. So yeah, defensively, right? 5 to 6 new impact players, right? So, and like I said, they were average last year. Could they go to top 10 defensively? Could we be looking at a top 10 offense, top 10 defense? That's possible. That's just what the numbers say. So, yeah, man, I don't like the Cardinals. I'll be very upfront with that. But it's hard for me to make a case that they're not, a really good team. I mean, and here's, where they improved, where they didn't improve. Obviously, offensive line, their position groups, quarterback, obviously identical. Entire offense is the same. Defensive line, though, major, major upgrades. Walter Nolan, Calais Campbell, Tomlinson, Josh Sweat, major upgrades to the defensive line. Obviously, bring in Will Johnson to the secondary. And yeah, man, are the Cardinals going to be a 10-win caliber team? Is the NFC West the best division in football? I mean, we got to be talking about this, right? Because I think a lot of people assume that the Niners are going to bounce back, right, and win 9, 10 games. If the Cardinals are the worst team in the NFC West, is the NFC West the best division of football? Maybe we don't have the top end teams like the NFC North or the AFC West, for example. But man, I think the NFC West deserves a whole lot more credit as just being a gauntlet, man. Because there are no bad teams, and I don't even know if there's going to be a team with a losing record next season. I mean, every team in the NFC West is expecting a winning season. So, I mean, it's going to be tough for anybody. I think, especially for the Cardinals, they'll probably be the underdog in just about every game they play in division next season. But yeah, man, they are moving in the right direction. That is for sure. Leave a like if you enjoyed on this video. That took way longer than I was hoping for. But I mean, man, I just get to yapping when I talk about these things because it's interesting, man. I really put myself in the mind space of a fan, for example. So yeah, man, a lot of positives. And as we get going, it's going to be only more and more positivity and optimism going forward. So yeah, man, leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. I will see you all in the next one.